Yeah.
All right. What?
Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to day 5 of the Scores Soccer Summit. My name is Angela Bailey, hailing out from America Scores Bay Area, where we serve over 2,000 students and work with 80 different school sites to provide free soccer, poetry, and service learning programming. Across the country, America Scores is in 12 different cities, partnering with over 300 schools, working and training with 1,000 plus coaches in order to serve 12,000 plus poet athletes, as we call them, poet athletes, as they are learning life skills and learning to express themselves on the field and off the field. We are so honored to have everybody here with us today, our incredible lineup of speakers. Special shout out to Alicia Yano for putting together such an inspirational panel of speakers and leaders in their field together. Thank you so much. That is what the summit is about. We're coming together to share knowledge, to be inspired, and then to amplify the message and take action. One of the ways you can amplify the message is to join womeninsoccer.org. It's a free membership. It will grow your network and it will expand our soccer community. Also, shout out to Goal 5 apparel for her. It's beautiful, it's innovative, and it's about time, right? So definitely go to Goal 5, check them out. And you could actually be a lucky winner because each session Goal 5 is giving out a prize randomly selected to one audience participant. Cross your fingers, it could be you today. So thank you for joining. Thank you to everybody. We're about to be inspired by these two amazing speakers. I'm going to kick it over to Erin so that we can all get ready to feel inspired. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to share my screen. This always takes me just a moment. First of all, Rachel and I, Dr. Rachel Lindvall and I are so extremely happy to be here. For any of you who have checked us out last year, we talked about mindfulness, and this has kind of become our full-time gig. And our hope is to always empower you and your athletes through mindfulness. When we were asked to talk about confidence, empowering young women, this is something that is very dear to both Rachel and myself, to our hearts. This is something we're so incredibly passionate about. We've obviously lived through as well. So we're excited to talk about that today. A little bit about my boss, business partner here, Dr. Rachel Lindvall. She has her doctorate in mindfulness research. She is a professor. She's been coaching at the university soccer level for over 20 years, an athletic therapist. She does it all. She's given me a lot of treatment actually as an athlete. And myself, my name is Erin McLeod. I am one of the goalkeepers for the Canadian women's national team, and I have been for probably too long. I've been to 4 FIFA Women's World Cups, 2 Olympic Games. I have a bronze medal from the London Olympics, and am very proud to be in the Canadian Olympic Hall of Fame. So when Rachel and I started chatting about confidence and where it came from, we were kind of going through some presentations that she had done with her university program. And she had this one slide that was like, what is that one outfit that you wore as a kid where you're just completely authentic and yourself? And I don't know if you can take a moment and think about that outfit. I had a number of these outfits. I had a mullet for a while and baggy t-shirts, Levi jeans, and like Reebok high top sneakers. And this is another outfit that I often wore. So this is a Christmas family photo. Very nice. My dad's taking the photo, and this sums it up. So when I was a kid, I just was obsessed with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, of course. I was everything sports, absolutely obsessed with everything sports, G.I. Joes. But it was kind of also a confusing time for me because all the things that I loved so much, only the boys did. And I'll never forget the day, talking about empowerment and getting women's sports on TV. I'll never forget the day I was 5 years old and watching the Olympics in Canada, and I saw a female Canadian figure skater on TV. And for me, that was it. I was like, oh my gosh, I can go to the Olympics. And so that was obviously a big moment and something that has been in my heart ever since. And I've, of course, been to a few Olympic Games. But This is also a phase, like I said, it was a bit confusing. Gender roles were a bit confusing. And again, I was also a competitor, and I competed with my father every day. I wanted to eat as much as my dad. I wanted to do everything that my dad did. And I ended up gaining a lot of weight. So we can't talk about confidence and self-worth and empowerment without, I think, getting real. And for me, I went from this mullet. I actually got earrings because I often was called a boy. And that was like the worst thing that you could have said to someone. And I remember people would laugh about that. And then the weight that I put on, I would play soccer with the boys at recess, and they'd call me Big Mama, and they'd call me all these different names. And when it became too much, I then went and hung out with the girls. And the girls also bullied me and made fun of me. And I think for me, the worst part was one day someone who was, who still is very close to me, said, Erin, if you don't lose weight, no one is going to want to be your friend. And so that was a really obviously challenging time for me. And I said, okay, enough's enough. So I went from that. In the 5th grade, I put myself on a diet. I lost 30 pounds. I started running every day, and I grew my hair out to be more feminine. And I was chosen as one of the best soccer players in the city. So if you can imagine, I went from being bullied almost every single day to the next year being the most popular kid in school. I had a boyfriend, I was in the in crowd, and everything kind of started to change. What I felt in my heart was that who I authentically wasn't good enough, or I wasn't, accepted by society. I wasn't cool enough. I didn't understand, and it was confusing. So a lot of the inside focus, doing my passions, my shift went to everything on the outside. And so, like I said, it's time to get real. For me, a lot of my worth started to come from my sport, but more specifically, I developed an eating disorder. I started becoming obsessed with training, eating less and less. My relationship with my body image, everything that I saw in magazines and in TVs, is all these girls with, they're really bony girls. And I thought, okay, that's the look. And it became really, really unhealthy. I was moody. I was, hiding obviously what I was going through, or I thought I was doing a pretty good job, until I had this moment with my mom, and I'll never forget it. We had moved to Jakarta in Indonesia, and we were at an international school. And, I'm really struggling and having a lot of pressures. All my friends were really skinny, and I thought that's what was the cool thing. And my mom sat me down one day in tears, and she said to me, you have to choose your sport, or you have to choose to be anorexic. You cannot do both. It doesn't happen. It cannot exist. And it was an eye-opener. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. But, my mom called me out, and, I started thinking, okay, so I don't want to be unhealthy anymore. I started investing more in my nutrition, and then even more in my sport. Now, part of that was positive because I was healthier. But what I didn't realize is how much I had just invested in my identity as an athlete. And this really came to light in 2016. We were qualifying as a national team for Canada for 2016 Rio, the Olympics. And we were in the last game of the tournament. And if we won this game, we would then qualify to go to Rio. And I've had a few injuries in the past, and they've never kept me out of big competition. But in the warm-up of this game, I tore my ACL. And I knew it because I had already done it twice in my career. So I knew the feeling, and I had my physio come over, and she taped up my knee, and I, took a few Advils, and I played the game, and we won the game, which was incredible because it meant that the team would be going to the Olympics, but it also meant that I would not be going with them. And it was hard, not because I was injured, but as I watched my team that I was so proud to be a part of go through the Olympic Games, I realized that I was replaceable. Someone stepped in and did a great job, and I was sitting at home, and I realized that I had put all of my worth into sport. And what was worse is I put all of my worth into my coach's opinion. So this was especially devastating. I was depressed. My marriage started to fall apart, and I completely lost who I was. But it didn't kill me. It made me see that, of course, like I said, my worth was coming from external places. And then I really started to look at, okay, I'm putting my attention and effort into all these things, but what am I really in control of? And I started realizing I'm not in control of others. I'm not in control of coaches and their decision making. I'm not in control of outcomes, even though I can, play the game of my life and we can still lose. And then I started to put my attention into things that I can control. And that made me think, okay, what can I actually control? So effort, you can only give 100% of your effort. And for that, you can always be proud of. And then I thought, okay, mindset, how you learn, how you deal with mistakes, how you speak to yourself, and then where we put our attention. Thoughts that serve us, thoughts that don't, where are we putting our energy? And so that was a big moment for me because I started to realize where I needed to put my attention was the relationship that I had with myself. And I had already started using mindfulness as a tool, but a huge part of mindfulness is awareness. And what I became aware of is I had never really put a lot of effort into this area of my life. And so, where do you start? So first I took a step back and I said, okay, soccer is what I do, but it is not who I am. What are things that people cannot take away from me? My experiences, relationships I have with people. How do I want to be remembered? I want to be loving and kind and patient. And what is my why? I remember after my divorce, I got the Simon Sinek's book, Find Your Why. And I went through it. And I'm having these conversations for the first time with myself in my whole life. What are my values? I don't think this is a Canadian statement. It could be, what is my true north? But also, and more importantly, how do I speak to myself? And am I being true to all these things? It's easy to say, oh, be kind and generous to others. But am I being kind and generous to myself? And I think for so long, I didn't give myself props for all the work that I was doing along the way. So kind of to summarize for me, I was always putting my confidence, or it was based on other people's opinions of me, coaches' decisions, outcomes, past performances. And again, I never gave myself credit for where I was and all the hours and hours of work that I had put in. But more importantly, I was letting performances and others define me. I was just literally giving all of my power away. So it was about, okay, who am I? And being intentional about that process. I remember about a year and a half ago, I was sitting down in that low place in my life, and I made a list of all the things that I wanted to improve in. I wanted to be a better sister, a better daughter, a better friend. I wanted to be more kind, more patient. And, the list went on. And why I feel very lucky to work with Rachel and a number of sports sites throughout my career is research shows that confidence comes from multiple places, not just one place, not just soccer or an outcome. It comes from within, but it also comes from being all these other things. And it creates a more stable foundation and it promotes life balance. And so eventually at the end of the day, it becomes, a state of being. You're not putting on an act and puffing your chest out for a game. You're proud of all these small pieces of yourself and giving yourself the props. And so now the biggest shift in me is at the end of a soccer game, no matter what happens, I'm still playing, 37 years old, but whatever happens in the game, I know that all the people in my life will still love me for who I am because of the person that I am. But most importantly, I will love myself at the end of that game, no matter what happens. And that's the biggest shift. And the self-worth, I really think, comes from the time that you put into yourself. So I'm going to hand this over to, hold on, this is the lull in the game here. This is I always have a hard time stopping the share. There we go. Rachel, I will hand it over to you.
All right, thank you. Let me share my screen here. All right, so I'm sure that a lot of you can relate to something in Erin's story. And I think that Erin's story is a lot of people's story in one way or another. And I think, you know, especially hearing her struggles as she, you know, got into that like 5th grade age group, you're getting close to that middle school time where 99.9% of kids are struggling with their identity and struggling with, you know, who should they be? And I think that talking about mindfulness is that mindfulness can actually be a really big tool, not only for us as adults now, but actually helping our athletes be able to handle these life transitions and be able to go through things hopefully in a healthier fashion than what Erin had to go through and what so many of us have gone through. And so, first of all, if you're not familiar with mindfulness, my doctoral research was in mindfulness, but it was also a big part of it was reducing stress and anxiety, but also how it can help us with self-confidence. And mindfulness, just kind of a brief summary of it, is it's paying attention essentially in the present moment. It's paying attention to what's going on inside of us. It's paying attention to what's going on around us. And really importantly, it's in a non-judgmental way. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But being in that present moment is about accepting where we are now. It's being grateful for what we are, where we're at right now, what we have right now. And that's something that clearly we all can use, but it's hard to actually implement. So I want to give you some kind of tools to not only help yourself, but to be able to help these girls that you are impacting in your day-to-day life through your coaching. And ultimately, mindfulness is about what do we actually have right now? What can we do with it? And I geek out about being an underdog or coaching a team that's an underdog, because I'm like, okay, what do we have? We're going to rock it, whatever it is, instead of looking at what we don't have. So let's talk about that next. One of the first tools I want to give you is noting comparison. So before we get to the comparison side of things, I want to talk to you about what noting is. Noting is a big concept in mindfulness. And so noting is just observing. So what I want to do first is just have you close your eyes for 30 seconds. It's going to feel awful long on a situation like this, okay? Just close your eyes for 30 seconds, and I want you to just observe where your brain goes. It doesn't matter where it goes, just notice it, just observe. So I'm going to go ahead and start the time, and I'll tell you when to stop. Go ahead and close your eyes. All right, you can open your eyes again. So you can kind of notice, did your brain maybe go to a to-do list you have? Did it maybe go to something else that you did earlier today that you're still working on? Did it go to, you know, something from the past or the future? Or did it sit right where you're at right now? For most of us, it went to the past or the future. Research shows that we spend only 10% of our thought in the present moment. We spend 30% of our thought in the past and 60% in the future. So generally when we close our eyes and take that moment, our brain's going somewhere else. And so noting is just noticing when it's going somewhere else. And so when we talk about noting comparison, it's noting when we are comparing ourselves to others. So as many speakers have said, as many authors and famous people have said, comparison is the killer of joy. And we probably all can think of a moment where we got something for Christmas, maybe when we were a kid, or we got a new pair of shoes, new pair of cleats, we got a new something, and we were so excited about it and we were so happy about it until we showed our friends and they made fun of it, or we showed our friends and they had something nicer, or they said it wasn't as cool as we thought it was. And all of a sudden that joy is gone. And so this tool can help your athletes retrain their brain to notice when they're doing this. Notice when they're comparing to other people. Notice when they're comparing their skills to someone else or their experiences to someone else. Just noting that is the first step towards reducing how much we compare ourselves to other people, because we know that comparison makes us not feel very great. Right. And you can see it in your athletes, and you can see it when they compare themselves to others, and it doesn't empower them. And what we want to do is help you empower your athletes. And this is a huge one. So having those conversations about comparison and then saying, we as a team, we want to notice when we're doing it. It's a win if we notice, because when we notice it, we can say, okay, this isn't who we want to be. And practicing self-compassion, or the non-judgment side of mindfulness, is saying, when I notice it, I'm not hard on myself about it. I just notice it, and that allows me to do something about it, right? We can't do something about anything if we don't notice it first. So that's the first tool, is noting and just being aware of that comparison, and just what a joy crusher it is, and how being in the present and being appreciative of what we have in this moment is huge. For that. So the second tool I want to give you, I call, is changing the message on, quote, the other team. So I don't know about you, but as an athlete, when we would show up to games, my team would immediately start saying, oh, look at her, she's really tall. Oh, look at her, she's really fast. Oh, look at her, she's not very good. Oh man, that keeper's saving everything. Oh man, that keeper's dropping everything. And just our entire focus would be focused on the other team. So research shows us that we have a limited amount of attention. So if we as a team are taking part of our attention and putting it into worrying about what the other team does or doesn't have, then that's attention we're not able to put into performing at our best. And as a coach, I started a philosophy that said, the other team, they're just here so we can have a game. When we walk out on the field, we don't even need to look at them. We don't need to give them any of our attention. And ironically, other teams would notice and they would think, how come they're not looking at us? You would start kind of seeing them question why our team was so focused on our pregame routine. So focusing on controllables, helping your team learn that if they start talking about things that are outside of their control, if they start worrying about things outside of their control, remind them that we can't control any of those things. Let's focus on things we can do something about. And so much of that is that worry about opponents. Are they better than us? Are they worse than us? Because getting that concept of when we show up, we have what we have, they have what they have, and let's compete, versus worrying outside of, that's that mindfulness thing, keeping our brain in the present moment, controlling what we can control, instead of letting our brains race to what may or may not happen, which clearly we can't control the future. So tool number 3 is positive self-talk. And this is something that we all struggle with on some level. And so I want to encourage you to bring the tool of yet to your team and to your athletes, because so often what I've heard as a coach, whether it's with my own teams or whether it's at the camp setting, is I hear athletes say, oh, I can't do this, or I'm not very good at this. And instead we can change the verbiage and say, well, maybe you just haven't gotten it yet, right? It's a huge mental shift for athletes to say yet, and for you as a coach to say yet. You just haven't gotten it yet. And I think in this concept, a big part of it is actually saying, okay, maybe I'm not where I want to be yet, as a person, as a soccer player. But another thing you can do with your athletes to help them with this positive self-talk is having them have a little journal or even a piece of paper or whatever it is, and having them write down what is great about you. Taking a moment to have them reflect on what is great about me as a soccer player, as a person, and separating both, just like Erin was talking about. It's not just what's great about them as an athlete, what's great about them as a human being. And in my experience, you always have some kids that say, well, nothing's great about me. Well, that's a great conversation point. That's a great time for you to say, well, I think this is great about you, or having other teammates chime in and say, well, I think this is great about you. And having them start to change their perception of themselves and just changing from that negative self-talk to that positive self-talk. And research shows that positive self-talk helps us improve, helps us learn better than negative self-talk. So another question you can ask them in this tool of thinking in a more positive manner is also have them write down, what do you want to improve in soccer or outside of soccer, and why? And this why is a really great talking point, because if they want to improve on something so that they can be as good as this other person, or if it's somehow related to comparison, or if they want to be able to score more goals so that their parents are happy with them, or something that's really outside of their control, that's a great talking point with them. Or maybe they say, I want to improve at this so that I can play soccer in college. Great, that's helpful for you to know, to be able to encourage them in that. But the why they want to improve is really, really important, and it can create an opportunity to empower them based on their why, just like Erin was talking about with her why. Another tool I want to give you is praising the effort. And praising the effort comes to this noting thing again. You as a coach, noting what you praise, because so often as coaches, it's really easy for us to praise the outcome, right? The team that won, the person that scored, the great save by the goalkeeper. Nothing wrong with those things. Those are great things. But if we are only praising the outcome and we're not praising the effort or the process, then it actually can reduce the grit and resiliency in our athletes. These younger athletes are very outcome based, but why? They're outcome based because that's what has been praised by parents, by teachers, by siblings, friends, coaches. And so if we can help them understand that the effort is valuable, that the process is important, that small gains are valuable, we can help them become more gritty, more resilient, and empower them, because they understand the value that their effort brings, even if they're not getting that outcome yet. Another really important thing when noting what you praise is praising skill over ability or talent. And the reason why I have those in quotes is because ability is actually what you're born with. Talent is what people often say is people do without any work at all. So if we're telling someone they're really talented, we are implying that they have put in no work whatsoever. I know Erin hates it when people tell her she's talented, because she says, I have worked my tail off for everything. You just heard how committed she was as a 5th grader. Imagine what she's been like as an adult. So when we tell someone, oh, you're so talented, it makes them question the amount of effort that needs to go into things. Praising ability would be the equivalent of praising someone for their eye color or their skin color. So praising skill. Skill is something that anyone can develop, anyone can improve. And so praising ability or talent can oftentimes create players that are lazy, or it can make people say, well, I don't have the same ability as that other person, so I probably should try a different sport. So an example of that is an athlete that I know that actually was told, you know what, you're just not very athletic, and so you probably should try something else. And so later in life, they went on to being a manager of sports teams and whatnot, because they had been told early on they just weren't athletic, and it was their dream to actually be involved in sports. So they quit trying and just went to being a manager. So we wouldn't want to be responsible for that when someone can actually improve quite a bit in their actual skills. So praising that is really important. Tool number 5 is empowered people empower people. So it starts with us, right? This is why you're here. You're actually doing, at these webinars to improve yourself, to learn, to grow, to have things to be able to pass on to your athletes, because you are these people. You are empowered people. And empowerment, I take this concept from Brene Brown, but empowerment is not a pizza, meaning there's not just 10 slices to go around, or whatever, 12 slices to go around. Instead it multiplies. When we empower our athletes, they empower each other, and they empower those that are going to be impacted by them later on. And that starts with walking the walk, right? We all know this, but sometimes it's easier said than done. That means we're being aware of our self-talk, right? We're being aware of what we're saying to ourselves. As adults, sometimes it can be hard to think that we can improve at things, because as adults, sometimes we think that we kind of have what we have. And so we stop trying to improve. For instance, I have never been very acrobatic. However, spurred on by Erin last year, she does headstands often for balance and for neck strength. And I've always been a little scared of being upside down and headstands. But being the competitor that I am, I thought, I'm going to get this. And it took me about 9 months, but I got it this year. So at 42 years old, I got something that I literally never had gotten before, nor did I ever think I would accomplish in my life. But it starts with believing we can do something that we never imagined we could. And we can do something that maybe is completely new to us. So us being willing to learn new things, us being willing to fail, is a way that we can show our athletes what it looks like to be empowered. If we are demonstrating something and we mess up a little bit, then go ahead and say, hey, I haven't gotten it yet, or I just didn't do that as well today. Not, oh, I'm horrible at this, because we can do that too, right? So loving and valuing yourself will give permission and power for your athletes to do the exact same thing. And again, I know we all know this. This is just that reminder, because it can be really, really hard to live this out sometimes. So just some important things to remember. And again, you probably all know these things, but I just as a reminder, youth are changing physically and mentally all the time. And I know that you all know this, but I think that sometimes we just forget about the process that they're going through day in and day out. And part of that is that, they're growing at different rates physically and mentally. So they're going to learn at different rates physically and mentally. But the challenge they have is that if someone on their team grew faster than them, so they are, that bigger body that's more successful early on, it can make the smaller players feel frustrated, right? It can also make those players that grew faster rely on their physical aspects of their sport and not develop the actual skills that they need, and they're going to get passed up later on. So recognizing, even as coaches, we can sometimes kind of pigeonhole the tall player, or we can pigeonhole the fast player at young ages when they're not necessarily going to be the tall or the fast player forever. And it end up inhibiting them a little bit when they get older, because they've been relying on things that were a benefit that are going to change. There's another big thing, beginning skills and advanced skills. So beginning skills are essentially people that are good at beginning skills, oftentimes pick things up very, very quickly. And research shows that some people that pick things up really, really quickly, they may not actually develop advanced skills as much. They may kind of plateau a little bit earlier. However, there's other people that are really good at advanced skills, meaning it may take them longer to get through those beginning skills. It may feel like they're not going to get it. But if we can help those athletes be resilient, they could end up having better advanced skills and be better down the road than their peers. Not that meaning that in a comparison sort of way, just meaning that a lot of times kids give up because they say, I'm not as good as that person. Again, coming back to that comparison. So kind of understanding that and just remembering that as a coach, it helps you encourage them, because as you well know, the best tools you can give them are not physical, right? These mental tools of reining their brains in, which mindfulness is about being in the present moment, focusing on what we can control, being kind to ourselves. Mindfulness as a team would be when creating this culture to where when you hear someone comparing, we say, hey, it doesn't have to be where you're hard on them to say, hey, let's focus on what we can control. Can we control that? No. Okay, let's focus on this, right? Or comparing skills to someone else. Hey, what do you have? All right, let's be grateful for what we have. And just starting to change the conversation and change the culture. And it's amazing how when you set up a culture, how quickly youth and athletes buy in. I coach at Notre Dame soccer camps in the summer. And I have a group of junior hires for only 4 days. And from the beginning, I set up saying, hey, we're a team that we have each other's back. These kids have never met each other. So here they come in feeling awkward. They don't know each other. They don't know me. And I tell them, hey, we're a team. We support each other. When we fail, we praise each other for the effort. And we are going to, as a team, we're going to be encouraging and we're going to get better together. And it's amazing to see that culture that's developed just in those 4 days, just from setting that standard. You watch them relax. You watch them actually encouraging each other. You watch them not comparing, because that is the culture that has been created. So I encourage you, if you're not already doing that, try that. And again, it starts with us. So as a part of being a part of our webinar today, you'll be receiving a 50% off coupon for our individual high performance program with the Mindful Project. And you can go online just to our website, mindfulproject.ca, to be able to put that code in that you'll be receiving via email, and be able to get our high performance program. And our high performance program actually incorporates a lot of the things we talked about today. It's for athletes 15 and up. We have athletes, it's targeted towards the high school, college, and professional, so an adult ages. So even as a coach, it's something that it's a 12 chapter program that gives more foundational elements of mindfulness, awareness, helping you really learn how to apply noting, dealing with mistakes, resiliency, grit, and just so many of these concepts that when working through them and learning how to apply them can become a regular part of your thinking, a regular part of your life, and be able to pass that on to your athletes. So Erin and I wanted to make sure we left some time for some questions. Erin, you can go ahead and turn your mic on there. I think have you seen the chat coming through?
Yeah, I forgot to say that. This is my job, you guys. I apologize. I was supposed to say at the beginning, if you have any questions, we'll get to them at the end. But there was a few in the chat I can address, and then Rachel, I can hand it to you. There's some in the Q&A chat as well. No, I can't find just the chat. Where's that? Okay. So again, really great questions. The difference between comparing and having standards. So as a national team athlete, we're all given, the goalkeepers, for example, the national team, we're all given a spider plot of all the skills that are required at the highest level. So there is already a set of standards. But what I would say about that, and what I really believe when it comes to confidence, and this is throughout our program, is really celebrating your uniqueness. And I have a lot of traits as a goalkeeper that are unique to me that I'm very proud of, and talking about, strengths and areas I want to improve on. There's a lot of skills that are my strengths, but I'm continually watching some of the best men and women in the world to get inspiration and to get ideas. And for me, it's about, okay, let's try this. Does this work? Does this make me better? And, it's about choosing what works for you and what doesn't. So there's definitely a standard, and I think a level that you want to encourage, of course, but as much as possible, I think also celebrating the unique parts of who you are as a keeper. I think in my past, I've had a lot of coaches who have said, why aren't you doing it like this? And I think that's one of, it's a pretty harsh thing, and almost taking away from the player that person is. And I think, obviously you can see as a coach the differences between the two, but having a set standards, I think, is important, but also taking the time to celebrate the uniqueness, talk about things that they think define them as a player. And again, the more you can kind of put that responsibility and accountability on the player, like look inside themselves. And sometimes it's really hard for athletes to be like, I'm really good at this. And and I had a sports psych sit in front of me and tell me, well, you're good at this and this and this. And if I could go back 25 years, those are the things I would have wished I could have just said so easily about myself, if that makes sense. And I find that the moment you start comparing, it comes from a place of lacking almost, instead of, empowering others, celebrating what they're good at, watching them, respecting these little things that you can potentially work on and try yourself, but not better than, worse than. That makes sense, because one person's going to be better off and one person will always be worse off. So, and then the second question in the chat, which was a really good one, I love it. Scouting teams for games, how do we still focus on our own team? I think that's awesome. And the way that I would, an example I would use is when you're preparing for a test, you would study, of course. So I think it's about having as much information as possible about the other team, knowing what they're going to bring the next day, but also focusing on your strengths and how that's going to counter their strengths. And also looking at areas where you can take advantage. So I think it's just about doing your homework, and it's smart, and it's not comparing, it's just being prepared as much as possible. And then also bringing your strengths into it and really praising those things. Rachel, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a really great question about the scouting versus, and the preparation side of things. And Erin, I think you nailed that as far as, do your homework. But the thing is when you show up to the game, that's really what I'm talking about, is when you show up to the game, because when you show up, you already know what you know. And I have coached way too many teams to where I hear coaches, or I hear some of my athletes say, oh, that goalkeeper is dropping everything. Oh, this is going to be easy. And what do? We lose the game and we don't score on her. And so the thing is it's like, if we are looking at the other team, evaluating how good we need to play, or, making those things, it's like, no, like we have what we have at that point. So yes, do your homework as far as scouting. Like absolutely, I did that as a coach, and know tendencies of players or tendencies of teams, know what kind of style of play, all that kind of stuff. But once you get there, your focus should be on, you should have already done your preparation, right? So once you get there, you're just you're just focusing on that preparation. You're getting warmed up, you're getting ready to go. It doesn't matter what the team on the other side of this field is doing at that time. So I think that's a great question. So hopefully that clarifies.
Awesome. And Rachel, do you see the Q&A?
Let's see.
I didn't realize there was a separate section.
There we go. All right. So the, let's see. You talked about it, the first one, the one you talked about with comparison already, right, Erin?
Yeah, I would say.
Okay. All right.
I hope.
Yeah. So yeah, I think with this comparison side of things, someone's asking, is it normal to compare ourselves to others? Yeah, I think it's human nature. I think it's absolutely normal. It just doesn't usually help us. And so that's kind of, I think, what we're talking about is being the best you can be, versus so many kids are just trying to compare themselves to everyone else, versus really owning who they are and owning what they can bring. So someone was asking about how do we give coaches interested, what advice would you give to coaches interested in our field of studies, or any recommendations on programs? It really depends on what level you want to go. Like obviously I've done a master's and a doctoral degree, so that's great, but that's maybe a whole different level. Even there's mental coaching certifications. I think obviously our program gives a great foundation. Again, that high performance program, we give someone a really, really great foundation into these topics. So I think that those are some good places to start there. Erin, I don't want to hog if you want to take the
No, I was
next one.
just going to add to that. When I kind of kicked off my starting looking more into mindfulness from the academic side, I did a mindfulness-based stress reduction course, and there's a lot of those courses, actually about 8 weeks. So if you're looking to, it's cool because you really get to experience it. You know, you can be meditating or doing mindfulness, 30 minutes a day. So you actually start feeling the effects of mindfulness like a couple weeks in, which is really cool. So that's potentially another resource that could be helpful. Go on.
Oh, this is a quick one. If you want to read more about mindfulness and coaching and recommendations, I would say the Mindful Athlete is a great one. Erin, I'm blanking on the author. Yes, George Mumford.
Yeah.
Yes, George Mumford. Yes, that is a great one. The Mindful Athlete. Another person's asking the difference between 13-year-old and 15-year-old players as far as tips on developing competitiveness in younger girls. It's saying they struggle with challenging each other because they don't want to look bad. And I think that honestly, it ties right into what we're talking about this confidence. Because if they're not wanting to hurt each other's feelings by beating them, or they're afraid they're going to get beat, any of that, it really comes back to this confidence piece. And so I think working on, like, it may not sound related, but in my experiences, the reason why they're not wanting to compete with each other is like you said, they don't want to risk losing. So it's easier to just not try. That's a big thing actually in that research is showing in this age category. Or they're not wanting their friend to be mad at them. Oh, I don't want to be mad at me, if I beat you. And so I think that honestly, like really creating this culture to where the confidence, the empowerment of the things that we talked about, I think is just a really going to help with that competitiveness. So, because it's all very interrelated. So again, hopefully that helps. Erin, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think those are all great points. And I think, especially myself as an athlete, like addressing quite early mindset as well in your environment, just building on what Rachel said, addressing like fixed mindset is believing you have a fixed amount of talent. And if you make a mistake or are afraid of looking bad, it means you're kind of exposed and maybe you don't have that much talent. Whereas a growth mindset is you make a mistake and it's an opportunity to grow. It means you're pushing your limits. So if you can have these conversations, and we have it, I mean, we just had a new coach with the national team, and she said that right off the bat. I want us to be honest. I want us to be accountable, know what every person around you is working on, encouraging the growth part of it, like learning constantly. And if you can promote that type of environment, and I've been in those environments where you make a mistake and the coach is the first one to be like, great work, and you can see that they're working on something and pushing themselves, then you have this environment where they feel limitless, like anything's possible, because they don't know what's possible, because now they're in a place where, okay, what works? Like, so if you can, as a coach, really encourage that, it gives them the courage, I think, to find their strength. Okay, we have another.
So there's a question.
Yeah.
Okay. The other question says, how do you develop parents to not compare their kids to others? And I would give my parents a lot of credit for this, because I can't tell you how many times I heard growing up, well, we're not them, right? Like, we're not that family. Or like, I'd be like, why don't we do this? Or they get to do that. Well, we're not them, right? And I think it's just that and they never said it in a harsh way. It was just literally like, like it's apples and oranges, and that everyone's different. Everyone has a different way of doing it. And so, in comparing, I think it comes back to gratefulness a lot of times. And I think if research has shown how much gratefulness actually helps us have a better outlook on life, actually makes us happier, reduces more in endorphins. And I think that if you look at it from a gratefulness side of things as a parent, or as a coach, as I think, like saying, like, if we're comparing in a negative sense of like, well, they have this and I don't, like, well, what do you have? Right? Or, oh, they're not very good. It's like, well, maybe the conversation is, how is this beneficial? Like, why, bringing this up, what is your intention? as far as in making a comment or in thinking these things, right? Because sometimes we're saying, oh, I'm better than this person, or I'm not as good as this person. What's the point? Like, why are we comparing? And maybe have them work through that. Kids are amazing, right? I mean, you guys know this. Kids are amazing as far as like, if you ask them a question like that, we don't always have to give them the immediate answer. They can work through it pretty well in that conversation. And I think being willing to have those conversations of what are we trying to get out of this? Like, how is this comparison helpful? Because Kobe Bryant, often early in his career was compared to Michael Jordan, and he got kind of sick of it because he loved Michael Jordan. He was a huge fan of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was an inspiration to him, but he said, I don't want to be the next Michael Jordan. I want to be the best Kobe Bryant. And I think that repeated phrase that you can have with your kids and with your athletes, it's about being the best Mariah or the best, Cece or the best whoever. It's not about being someone else, for better or for worse. Erin, anything from you?
Yeah, no, I love that quote from Kobe. But I mean, in our program, in our kids program, we say, you would never compare a bird to a lion. And I think that's the way you look at it. You celebrate how wonderful the unique individuals are, and just focus on the good, and that's, again, comparing to gratefulness, same thing, always focusing on the good, what is there instead of what's lacking.
And I actually thought of one more thing, if that's okay. In comparison, I had a school that I was coaching at several years ago. I had a goalkeeper that played for me that wouldn't be considered nearly as athletic as other goalkeepers who had played for me. And so in working with her, I just physically, she was not going to be capable of making some of the elaborate saves that some of the other goalkeepers I had worked with could. And so what we did was we really focused on her always being in the right spot. I mean, inches. We just worked and worked and worked with her being on the right spot. And the beautiful thing is that she knew she needed to do that. She knew that she couldn't make the acrobatic saves that other goalkeepers could make. And so we worked and worked and worked on angles, and she was very successful at us at a very high level of soccer. And so essentially, instead of trying to make her someone else, we made her the best her she could be. And she played very well for us and was very successful because she was so in tune to where she needed to be. And she was committed to that because she knew that's what she needed to do to be successful. She was never going to be successful as a different style of goalkeeper.
Again, okay, I can't stop, but I love that. I just wanted to say one more thing, because I'm not a parent. I mean, I have a Chihuahua, so I don't think I really have the right to give any parenting advice, but I did find that reading Angela Duckworth's book, Grit, she actually has, and her entire study and research is about encouraging effort and perseverance and why successful people have that. But there's an actual section about like the communication as a parent, where you want to be honest and encourage growth and avoid comparison. So I would highly recommend that. Grit by Angela Duckworth.
Thank you so much, Erin and Rachel. That was very, very insightful. I want to take your course for sure. And I'm going to. I do have a couple more questions. Do you guys mind? Okay.
Go ahead.
This is from Warren. How do you deal with parents who are buying their children's results? For example, giving $20 for a goal or a save, or even if the player is not playing, is not playing for their parents' money, it's for their parents' love and not to disappoint them or to lose their respect.
Yeah, so just a little side story. I had one of the most prolific goal scorers that's ever played for me actually quit playing her junior year of college for that reason exactly, is because she actually started not scoring on purpose because her parents would only congratulate her after the game if she scored, and she got so tired of it that, I mean, she was one of our best goal scorers, and all of a sudden she's refusing to score because of that. So if parents want to make their kids jaded, keep doing what they're doing, right? I mean, it's really helping to do the best you can when the kids are with you to help develop that mindset. But clearly, we can try to influence the parents as best we can, but clearly there's only so much we can do with that. But helping the parents understand that those temporary things are going to have a long lasting impact on their kids, and helping them understand that it's better to help their kids develop intrinsic motivation instead of extrinsic. And those extrinsic motivators are temporary, and research shows that intrinsic is what's going to last a lifetime. So we're doing the best we can basically in talking to those parents and with those athletes. But at the end of the day, clearly that's all we can do is the best we can on those things.
Erin, did you want to add anything on to that? Okay.
Oh, well said.
And this last question is actually going to lead into our very last question. Sorry. Ansel wants to know, is there any hope or a goal of yours to incorporate your mental training into the standard coaching license?
So we're actually looking into that right now. We've had multiple conversations with some coaches, and we've had our high performance program, as Rachel mentioned. What we generally do is when we get a team on board, we give it to the coaches for free, because we believe that, you know, common language in a team is extremely important, being able to communicate, being on the same page, but also for the coaches to experience it. I think mindfulness is best done when it's experienced. So yeah, so I think definitely getting the coaches on board, but that's something that we're looking into so that the coaches can do the hours and experience for themselves. So getting back to you, but I don't know if you want to add anything, Rachel, on that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, we're working with an organization in Canada on that possibility right now, but it would be great, obviously, to be able to do that, you know, in the US as well.
Nice. Well, this ties into the final question, I think. So this summit is bringing together top leaders in the soccer industry, and we're trying to share and learn from each other and see what the community wants and how the community can help with women and girls. And so what is your hope, your personal hope for the next 5 to 10 years? And what do you hope the community can do?
Erin, I'll go ahead and go first. I think for me, it's to continue to see the norms change as far as, and I think this is something that it's happening a lot, and there's a lot of work towards this, but the norms of what women can do, right? The norms of what's acceptable for women to do, the norms of what is, you know, the common language around women in sports. Just as we, you know, look at Christine Sinclair, who has scored the most goals, you know, internationally of any player, period, but yet she's often said that the most women. No, it's actually the most, period. And so starting to have more respect as far as not just, oh, she's the best woman or she's the best this, it's just she's a great soccer player. And I think seeing that language change, seeing those expectations change, and just continuing to see that culture change. I think we're seeing it, but continuing to have women and girls really understand that they are not second place.
I love that. Erin, what about you?
Yeah, well, we're actively working. I'm one of the player reps for the Canadian national team, and we're working behind the scenes. I know gender equity is a huge statement, and I know as Canadians, we're working towards that. And I consider Canada a pretty progressive country, but we still don't have any professional female sports in our country. And for me, like I said at the beginning, watching Elizabeth Manley, the Canadian figure skater, when I was 5, changed my life because I knew it was possible. So I think more than anything, I want to see more and more women's sports on TV because I think there's an audience for it. There's a hunger for it, and it inspires our young girls.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for giving of your time and energy. This was a fabulous session, and we will have it available in replays shortly. We'll put it on the website where it'll be available. Just want to thank Erin and Rachel again for being with us. And of course, everyone who is listening right now and will listen in the future. Thank you to our partners, Goal 5 and Women in Soccer and America Scores Bay Area. Appreciates all the support everyone's been giving for this summit. We have 2 more sessions today, marketability and Leslie Gallimore. who is the girls Academy Commissioner. And then tomorrow we'll have a last day of sessions. So thank you so much, and have a safe day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.